Hey guys, what's up? I decided to go live again. Which only a few hours later, I realize there's a number of you that missed my earlier one, and also I'm playing around with my setup here, and I'm starting to kind of like this, thanks to advice from my brother and Peter McKinnon, Gerald Undone, but mostly my brother made me really thinking about how best to use all these things. I got these like cool lights that are actually against the wall now. I was going to have them behind me and I just couldn't get it working. But what was really cool is with these lights, I was able to just basically make the background just black, which I think is really sweet. But anyway, so I'm here to answer any of your questions, any and all questions related to building software, making projects, whatever that might be. Let me know. That's why I'm doing these live Q&As. I do them fairly often. At least it hasn't been a few months. It's been a few months since I did them fairly often, but when I was doing them, I did them fairly often. So I just want to answer any questions you have related to whatever. So, hey guys, thanks for coming out. Script Kitty, this is live. Absolutely. What's the future of Django? Good question. I think a lot of it has to do with having more asynchronous features, right? So asynchronous Python is a really big thing. We're going to see a lot more of that happening with Django. Hopefully, we will also see the integration of the Django REST framework inside of Django. But I also imagine we're going to see a lot more like user-friendly features added, like Python manage.py, I guess, doesn't work for some people. So I think they're changing that a little bit. That's a good example. But they're always improving Django, and there's always so many new like packages that are just making Django that much better. Hopefully that answers your question. Hey, what's going on? Sunhill, hey, how's it going? AWS with Django. So I've already done this a couple times with AWS Lambda, and I did that with Zappa. It's like a really cool Python package tool that actually works with AWS Lambda. It's a little bit challenging to set up a full-on Django course with that. A long time ago, I did an Elastic Beanstalk one, but there's a lot of things that I use with AWS itself. So I think what I'm assuming you're saying is, how do you host your Django application on AWS? Because I also show you how to set up static files using AWS S3 all the time. So you don't really have to host your Django project on AWS to use so much of the things that are in AWS. So Prinash, I know it's been a while. I've been really, really heavily building codingforentrepreneurs.com, and I did a big migration for it. And I just been working on code stuff deep into R&D. I get in these rhythms, right? Sometimes I just code a lot and just do all of that over and over just to improve things. There was some stuff that was really long overdue as far as software is concerned, so I just worked on that. So yeah, anytime. How much salary can you get for a fresher Django developer? That's a good question. I think it ranges a lot on your actual skill set, right? So if you can just build basic web applications with Django, you might be able to earn 40, 50, 60,000 US dollars. If you can build pretty sophisticated systems with Django, even as a fresher, it may be like 80 to 100 would be my guess. I would imagine there's probably a lot of research on that. So that's what I would look on like Indeed.com to see what the Django jobs are listed as. Complete FastAPI tutorial. Thanks for the suggestion. What is it that you're looking for in the FastAPI tutorial? Because FastAPI can be incredibly simple, and how I use it is usually incredibly simple. So let me know what you think about that. Full stack versus software developers, what's the difference? I honestly don't know. I feel like full stack developers are software developers, and even only part of the stack is a software developer. So I think any software developer has hopefully a range of skills, And so a lot of people that are software developers end up being more of like maybe a back-end developer, or an application developer, or a front-end developer. And they're not necessarily all of those things, but all of those people are software developers if they are all of those things too. Roadmap for Java developers for Python and Django. So if you already know Java really well, I think Python's going to be incredibly easy to pick up. 30 Days of Python, my series that I have here on YouTube, really easy to do, I think, especially if you're already a developer. It does ramp up pretty quickly, but the first 15 days are incredibly easy, and you can probably get through them in a day or two if you are already a developer. After that, check out my Try Django series. Any of them, just get a hands-on approach to that. That's probably what I would suggest. And then if you really want to go to the next level, check out my e-commerce course on codingforentrepreneurs.com, or a quick way to get there is just cfe.sh. Cool. I'm really curious as to what projects you guys are working on. Or are you doing this stuff for school? Are you trying to switch careers? Are you trying to build a business? Let me know. Those of you who are trying to build a business, I think there's a lot of things that you need to consider when it comes to how your software works and how you should approach it. Eagerly waiting for Django with OCR projects. Yeah, I did tease this, a couple months ago. Still intending to do this. It's most likely going to be in Try Django 3.2. I was going to be doing a Try Django 3.1 series. I still might, but it's going to be a lot smaller than a Try Django 3.2 series because Django 3.2 is right around the corner. Do you have a guide to set up Cpanel for Django systems? Cpanel, as far as I know, does not really work with Django. Django has its built-in admin. It's been a long time since I've used Cpanel, so there might be a way or a script to do it. I just don't know. Is there a better way to make Django apps more dynamic? For example, change website title texts from Django admin. Yes. So you can use Django flat pages. Flat pages allow you to change pages from the admin. So if you're just looking for basic admin pages. Another thing you could do is make models, or like a specific model with data in there that's going to be shared across your entire Django project, and then just cache it. So then when it's being looked up, it's really fast on using those things. I don't know how often you're going to be changing titles that needs to be incredibly dynamic. Like if you have a blog post in Django, you can change that blog post title, and the next time it's looked up, or if the cache is cleared, the next time it's looked up, then you'll be able to see that new title, right? That's pretty dynamic, I think. Just finished your e-commerce website with multiple sellers like Amazon. Nice. Good for you, Prinash. That is quite a lot of work. Do you have it on GitHub? Did you share it? If you did, and for some reason you can't post it here, why don't you tweet it to me? Let me just put in a simple way to get to me on Twitter. Right there. I'm about to check it out. Hey, what's up? How's it going? I have a few projects in Django like Quiz App, Instagram Clone, e-commerce, etc. Please suggest some tough projects that you should focus on. So you've built an entire e-commerce application, not just I have products that I go into a shopping cart and purchase, as in I'm talking about inventory management, order management, shipping notifications, internal notifications, email notifications. You have all those things. And then if you don't, definitely do those things. Integrate Elasticsearch, integrate caching, like Redis caching, integrate Celery, and having some offloaded tasks and stuff like that. Maybe throw in some video processing there for thumbnails and whatnot. That's a lot of work right there. Any plans for FastAPI with React.js in the future? Yeah, probably. I don't know when, but probably. FastAPI is interesting, definitely interesting. Those two don't need each other though, right? So React doesn't need Django, Django doesn't need React. They can add a lot of value to each other for sure, but they don't need each other. So it's kind of, I don't know if I would actually have a project that for sure uses those two things together, but definitely going to be talking about them separately. You want to know if Django with Vue.js? So I haven't spent enough time with Vue.js to create a course on it, so that's not something I have in mind right now. Thanks for the question. You have a startup in mind? What front-end client should you use, Vue or React? I heard Vue is easier to learn comparing to React. That was not my experience. I thought React was great and really easy to learn, but it doesn't matter. Just pick one, learn it, get really good, and just keep going, right? And if it's really challenging, if you're like struggling to understand the basic concepts, then maybe try the other one. Once you get past the basic concepts, then it's about building something. You'll learn a lot more by building something than you will trying to figure out which one might be better for you right now. And that's true with like just pure JavaScript too. You could just use pure JavaScript and you would learn a lot just about JavaScript that way. It's going to be harder, probably harder than using React or Vue. But you'll learn a lot about JavaScript, so then it'd be a lot easier to learn React and Vue. Django versus Node.js. These aren't fair comparisons. This should actually be compared Python versus Node.js, as in the Python runtime. So when you actually type out Python and run something. So Node.js is similar to that. So the closest comparison between Django and a Node.js web application, or really a JavaScript web framework like Django, would be Adonis. So Django and Adonis are like the competing things. They are similar in some ways, but they're also very different in other ways. It's not a fair comparison, but both Python and Node.js do things very, very well. And they do a lot of things very similarly, and a lot of things just slightly differently. So really it's just kind of pick one and go for it. You know what I mean? Have I ever done a coding challenge like 100 projects in 100 days to improve my coding in Django? No, I don't do like a coding challenge. Instead, I challenge myself to make projects all the time. So that's my coding challenge, right? Like it's just what's a problem that I want to solve. I'm going to go try and do it. And that's what I do right now. I'll build it out as fully as I can. And that's how I've gotten better. However, some people get a lot better with these coding challenges. So I do recommend that if that is something that you are already interested in doing. If not, if you're not interested in those coding challenges at all, just go for it with your own projects, right? There's plenty of things that you might want to solve on your own. And if you can't think of something to solve, talk to your friends or family that complain all the time and see what they want to solve, and you can figure out software for that. That's like a really low hanging fruit of doing something, especially like if you have an uncle that's been working in an industry for like 25 years, go talk to that person and be like, hey, what's the problems with your industry? You'll probably have a bunch of ideas of software automations that you can use with any software, but definitely with Django and stuff like that. So you're waiting for React with Webpack, also common issues with Create React app for bigger projects. Yeah, I actually really like using Parcel.js. I just recently did one. I don't know, within the last 6 months, I did one related to using Parcel with React.js. So check that out. Parcel's really, really cool. Django doesn't have a lot of supportive asynchronous views and ORM, and you feel sad about it. It's coming. I don't think it's something that's as important as you might think. Like it's important, but a lot of asynchronous programming doesn't have to be asynchronous, and there's no real big performance gains from having it asynchronous. In some cases, yeah, but not all the time. Let's see, what was his name? I'm trying to remember who actually gave a really good talk on this, on what's coming with asynchronous things related to Django. The Heroku style product that DigitalOcean released. Yeah, I think it's called like, I don't remember the name of it now. I'm going blank. DigitalOcean, like app engine. No, that's not it, because that's Google. I did try it. Basically what they do is they build a Docker container from your code. So you don't actually build the container yourself. You don't make a Docker file. You don't do any of that. You just push your code, and then they build a container, and then they run that container. In my experience, it doesn't perform nearly as well as Heroku's build platform. And then there's less options, unless this has changed, but there was less options to get the benefit out of Docker, right? So you can't just add your Docker container on there. You just push code. So I wasn't a huge fan, and the build times took a really long time. Whereas building Docker containers on Google Cloud Platform using Cloud Build, those things were incredibly fast, right? I mean, when I say incredibly fast, it still takes like 5 to 10 minutes. But when I did it on DigitalOcean, it took like, I want to say it took like 15 minutes, and it still failed. So like the actual build failed. Heroku's build speed is amazing. It's really, really good. I still really, really like Heroku. What do I think about reactifying Django as the MERN stack is growing a lot these days? Yeah, so there are benefits to the MERN stack for sure. I don't know it in and out like people that develop in MERN all the time. I really like using Python for the server side, and thus Django for the server side, as well as a few others. But I think Django and React have a nice, or can have a nice symbiotic relationship working really well. There are still some things like server-side rendering for the static files, for the React files, that could be improved. Could be improved a lot, actually. So hopefully that happens. Maybe there's a better package out there that I just don't know about. Yeah. So my voice is already getting a little coarse because I just did one of these a couple hours ago. But I wanted to jump on to answer some of you guys that may have missed the one from earlier. But yeah, so I definitely just scrolled and skipped a bunch. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to answer questions for maybe like 10 more minutes, unless we get a really good discussion going on here. But in general, just so you know, if you have suggestions for projects, cfe.sh/suggest. That's where you can suggest anything. On cfe.sh, I have all of my projects on there. Everything that I've ever done is on there. So if you're wondering, what have I finished? What are the projects that I'm working on? Stuff like that. That's all on that website. So check that out. Some of those things are on YouTube, but everything's definitely on my website. And it's a really good idea if you want to suggest content. Whether or not I end up doing it is one thing, but that's how I've done so much of my content for 8 years, right? Is from suggestions from you guys, just like over and over again. One of the big things was React, actually. So a long time ago, React and Angular. I was like, no way. I like jQuery. jQuery is amazing. I'm not going to use Angular or React. But then I had a number of students that are just kept on going like, oh, you really need to try Angular, or you really need to try React. I finally did, and they were totally right. So I take those suggestions very seriously, and that's how I improved, and that's how a lot of you guys can improve too. You can look at the suggestions that are on there and be like, oh wow, I should learn that too. You know what I mean? Currently backend is complete, and the other developer is currently working on the front end stuff. I'll tweet it. Cool, sounds good. Let's see here. Concepts necessary to be a Django developer. Models, testing, views, templates, the admin, management commands. If you know those things really well and in depth, forms, the Django REST framework with serialization, I think those are probably good. It's a lot of stuff, even though maybe it sounds simple, but it's a lot of stuff. Good question, though. It's a good thing to think about. Like, what are the concepts you need to know to be as effective of a developer as possible, especially a Django developer? Yeah. I mean, you also might want to know operations side of things, like actually the networking and all that. That's probably a good idea to know. Okay, so let's go back to this one. Splitting Django monolith architecture into microservices. How would you go about doing this? This is not an easy task. And it's not one I recommend for the vast majority of you. So monoliths, there's like this hate against monoliths, but there's only hate against monoliths when it gets to a certain scale, right? So if the complexity of the features of your primary application don't get incredibly complex, you don't need to break apart your Django application. Instead, what you'll end up doing is using third-party APIs or your own microservices to enhance that application. Here's a good example. So I did a Tweet Me Too project. That is one where you essentially make something like Twitter. Now, in there, at some point, there will need to be a spam detector. So the question is, do we bring this into Django? Like, does Django actually handle the spam detection inside of Django's processes? Or do we use a microservice or a third-party API? Now, I think you probably know where I'm going with this. It's going to be a microservice or a third-party API. Django itself is not necessarily going to be doing it. Now, of course, you could do it in Django. There are ways to do it. But if you are using a machine learning algorithm, your own machine learning algorithm for this, I would say put it in a microservice and have that microservice running on its own where it doesn't necessarily disrupt your primary Django process at all, ever. Because that's where monoliths start to fall apart, is when you put too many features in it and one feature goes down, the entire thing goes down, right? That's one of the downsides of using a monolith. Whereas microservices, on the other hand, sure, you have more rigidity when something goes down. So if one microservice goes down, the whole system doesn't go down necessarily, but it's also a lot more complex to manage a bunch of microservices to run one application. Hopefully that answers your question. It's a good question. Something worth checking out more. Hey, what's up? Carlos. Hello. It's been a month and you're still stuck at abstract base user. Why are you spending so much time on abstract base user? Are you trying to customize the user model? Because you don't need to. Have I tried Snowpack or Vite? You can eliminate the need to run two servers. Well, you don't need to run two servers anyway. Django can serve. Well, let me back up a second. You will have a static file hosting server. That will be true with this process. Django is another server. Django can actually have that implemented on its own templates. I think maybe that's what you mean, but I haven't seen Snowpack or Vite, so maybe I should look at those before I start talking about it. Snowpack. Let's take a look at this thing. Okay, so Snowpack, faster front-end build tool. Yeah, this looks a lot like Parcel, but I'll have to look into those things. Thanks for mentioning. Appreciate it. It's late. It is late. That's correct. It's nearly 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. here. But I did a live chat earlier, and I realized I missed part of my audience out there, so I wanted to do another one right now so we could chat it up. You know what I mean? What are you guys working on? That's the thing. It's like, is everyone just doing tutorials and like constantly doing tutorials? Is that who's here, or are you guys building real projects? Are you trying to get a job? What's going on? I want to know. Because that's like I build these courses. I teach for two reasons, three reasons maybe actually, three reasons. One is if I don't know something well enough to teach it, I don't know something well enough. So that pushes me to learn things and get better at things, right? Number two is for you guys. I teach for you guys because I've heard a lot of great things from so many of you building cool new projects or going off and starting your own YouTube channel or getting a job. Like, I've heard these things so much, and it's really fulfilling to hear that. And the last thing is I want to be a part of the actual like wave that is technology. I think it's just so fascinating. We're going to help so many people. You know what I mean? Hey, what's up? Freelance by day, side projects by night. Nice. Majority of them use Django. Any side projects that you want to talk about right now? I don't know. Let me know. Patrick, thank you. You're the champ. bud. Appreciate it. Do you guys watch Network Chuck or any networking channels? Or do you watch any like mechanical engineering channels like Jeremy Felding or who else? Stuff Made Here. Stuff Made Here is really good. I kind of wish he did more tutorials. He shares and explains things really well, but he doesn't get that deep into it usually. Sometimes, but most of the time not. How can we show our projects to you? Oh, just shoot a tweet to me. Send them to me on Twitter. Maybe I'll have to go through one of these live ones and actually have my Twitter feed up. Probably some way to do that on this StreamYard. But at the very least, just have a way to look at these things live with you guys so we can talk about it. Yeah, this is my studio. My garage is my studio. I used to have an indoor studio, but I now have kids and they are loud from time to time. So I moved into my garage, and before I actually had the setup where the wall right there was my back. Like I'm now looking at the wall that was behind me before, but I actually like this look a little bit better. What do you think? Do you like this look? And as you know, it's not like people are going into into office buildings much right now, and I don't think I would anyway, because I like being near my family, my wife and kids. You know, it's nice being able to stop doing this and just go play with my kids for a little bit or something. So I don't think I'll ever not work near them, at least. I don't know, maybe when they get older and they have no interest in just playing and hanging out with me. I hope that never happens, but I'm sure at some point it will. We'll see. They're still young, so I got quite a bit of time before that happens, probably. Can you use auth login authentication on multiple tables? I'm asking you to authenticate users, customers, and admin differently. It's a challenge by my teacher, so I have to do it. Ha! You want me to answer your homework? You can you password protect tables themselves? You can provide different permissions on the table level, but I don't know if that's what you're asking. And that wouldn't necessarily be done through Django, but Django itself can prevent access to different tables or different models. If you do it through Django, you definitely can't do that. It's true. Django channels or Django REST for intermediate. So Django REST framework is what I would do. Django channels a little bit more advanced and not always necessary. Django REST framework, that's like probably my of Django packages. That's probably my second most used Django package that I have. That would actually be an interesting challenge for one of you, is to search my entire GitHub repo and parse out, what actual what packages I actually use the most, right? That'd be pretty cool. So cfe.sh/GitHub to find that, because I actually want to know what that answer is. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something more random, or something like Python requests might be up there as well. Can you develop a game using Python? Yes, there's something called Pygame. It's okay. I don't love making games in general. I enjoy playing them, but making them is just not something for me. So I typically don't do that. But a lot of people have made fun games in Pygame for sure, and like Flappy Bird clones and stuff like that. But I almost think JavaScript, you'd probably be better off making a JavaScript front end game, like a web application game, and then using Django as a backend to manage the sessions and stuff like that. A tutorial on Python bots. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I have some things here and there, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Can I take over the world with Python? Nathan, If you figure out how to build a general artificial intelligence using TensorFlow, then yes, your answer is yes. that's yeah. UWP. That's what is that again? All of these acronyms that I forget from time to time. Yes, Universal Windows Platform. My guess is probably, I think Kiwi actually handles Windows applications as well, Windows desktop applications. But this is a good case of using Node.js and JavaScript instead by means of Electron. Actually, now that I'm remembering it, there's something else called Pi WebView or Py WebView. I think that also can build Windows applications. I don't know if they're strictly the UWP ones or not, but is Django good for beginners for web development? Yes, absolutely. It's fairly complex for sure because there's a lot going on, but it's also opinionated on how things need to be executed. So, for example, it has user authentication built into Django as a feature. Flask, FastAPI, they don't have these things. You have to add additional packages to make that happen. So in that case, it's amazing for beginners because you don't have to think about all of the security implications that go into creating users. Django has thought about, or the Django core developer team and the Django community has thought about this a lot. So it kind of doesn't leave you. I mean, you could still be exposed, but it's a lot less likely that you'll have really bad security if you just use Django. So, and there's a lot of tutorials on it. I have a bunch. So it's definitely a cool thing. All right, guys, I'm going to be on just for a few more minutes. It's definitely kind of getting late on my end. So, yeah. And also, we're kind of slowing down on these questions here. Some people say that Django is open source and is better to use for security, or is it safe to use it on the industry level? Since it's open source, is the security an issue? Of course, everything that's on the internet, every computer program ever, it has a security concern, right? Every single one. So anyone that says any system's foolproof, they are lying to you or they are ignorant of it. It's just like people build these things, and sometimes you put a comma when you should have put a semicolon, and maybe that exposes a bug that allows somebody in. So those things happen. Now, when you're saying about industry, Pinterest and Instagram are two of the most notable ones that run on Django. I think even to this day as their primary application. They have other things too, so it's not just Django. Like they have Node.js, they have a lot of services that are running, but Django is one of them. So take that for what it is. If you were the boss, what requirements would you have for junior developers? Well, hopefully we'd be building a big project together, and what I would be doing is I would be doing my best to have you focus and own one piece of that project, but also help with the integration of the bigger project. So that we all can learn best on how to proceed with these small subsets of any given project itself. The requirements I would have for juniors. Another thing I would probably have them do is help refactor and write unit tests for the end-to-end unit tests for the entire application. That actually might be something that I'd have them do initially, is to literally try and refactor as much of the code as possible to actually improve it. With that, they'll probably have to learn a lot from that. But what I'm hoping for is that other developers missed something that some of these junior developers would need to spend the time going through all this stuff and getting it right and coming through it. And then that would also allow a more senior developer to review similar code if the junior developer is having problems, and thus having also a senior developer having eyes on very similar code. So the code in question hopefully gets improved one way or the other, whether it's the senior developer or the junior developer. I think I'd spent a lot of time doing stuff like that for features that were implemented really, really quickly. I already answered this one. Let's see here. Please up my Django channels tutorial if I have enough time. What is missing right now? Are there features about it that I am not aware of that are missing? Maybe there could be. That happens, you know. New features come out, and Django channels 2. I haven't needed to use it in a project for a little while, so I don't always need that WebSocket communication. Sometimes you do, but I don't always need that. Django or Flask, which one is good to start with? I just mentioned this about beginners for web development. So I still think Django is a great one to start with. However, if you're just wanting to get some sort of program on the internet, Flask is great because it's just a Python function. And once you figure out how to deploy that to the internet, you now have your Python function on the internet. Django, on the other hand, is like a full-on web framework. If you want users, you want to build a project that's either a social network or a SaaS or an e-commerce project or something like that, then Django is probably the way to go. So to me, the more complete projects are in Django. The smaller ones are in Flask. I've learned Django, but I want to master it. What can I do? I just mentioned a bunch of things early in this one, so maybe go back to like 20 minutes or so. A bunch of things on concepts you would probably want to learn. You know what I mean? Best resources to learn how to write better tests. I think it's testdrivendevelopment.io. They kind of start with tests. That's specifically what test-driven development is. So that might be a good place to check out. I've definitely seen a number of articles on there that were like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Also, Adam Johnson, he's a Django core developer. I think he writes a lot about tests on his blog, and I think he even has a book for it. So check that out. Many YouTubers say that learning C or C++ will help in placement. What do you regard this? So if you know C or C++, yes, you like. There's not as many C developers or C++ developers as there are Python developers. And if you know C or C++, and your job or your potential job is requiring you to learn Python or Ruby or JavaScript, it's going to be a lot easier for you because those languages are more challenging to learn. So something like Python is more of an abstraction anyway than C or C++. So it's going to be a lot easier and very fast for you to pick up Python, and probably sometimes a little annoying for you to learn Python from C or C++ because of all of the intricacies that C and C++ have. Yeah. Hey, you're back. You are Indian. How do we secure OAuth 2 tokens in the Django models? You do not secure OAuth 2 tokens in the Django models. What? How do we securely store OAuth 2 tokens in the Django models? You're referring to the tokens that would be used for authentication. I think the Django REST framework has a few suggestions of apps that do this pretty well. So check those out. But you could always hash them in your database. Or you could use, I would say hashing is probably one of the easiest ways to do it. Hey, what's going on? Here we go. I'm building a stock monitor Django app. Any suggestion to get live stock price? Oh man, I had a list of these things. I don't know where I put it. It's definitely not on this computer, but I had a list of finance things that are related to live stock prices. hit me up on Twitter. Maybe I'll remember in a few hours. I don't remember right now. Roof of the world. Roof of the world. Why should I know? I should probably know what this is. Greenland? Nah, that's probably not it. Let's see here. I don't know what White Hash Junior is, guys. So thanks. Okay. What were the difficulties you faced in your learning path and the common mistakes? So I think when I was learning, well, there wasn't nearly there was like no tutorials and very few articles written about Django and Python. The challenges that I had a lot of times were how to effectively associate data and how to extract that data from a database in an efficient manner. And honestly, the efficient manner part thing, I still have to get better, you know? So I think that one of the things that I luckily did was I decided to pick up projects, right? Instead of just learning concepts. So I think one of the biggest challenges I definitely had was with other languages, I would just learn conceptual things and never be able to apply them to a real project. And what Django did for me once I found Django was it did two things. Number one, I was fortunate enough to find an actual tutorial that had a project. And I was freelancing at the time, like consulting basically for web applications, even though I didn't know how to build them, but I understood how they worked. So I was consulting for them, and a friend of mine was doing some work for me, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do it in Django." Cool. He did it in Django, and I knew enough of like WordPress and Shopify and a little bit of jQuery and JavaScript because of those concept things. So I found it very hard with concepts, right? So if you don't have context of what these concepts are, then it's going to be struggle bus all the time, right? So like a good analogy of this would be if I threw you into a kitchen and told you to make me baked ziti. Now maybe you know what that is, but maybe you don't. But let me say that I throw you in to make baked ziti, but then I take you to a field to roll some flour, and you're like, "What? Why am I learning how to do flour? I want to bake ziti. Like, I need to make this pasta dish. I don't need to know how to turn flour into pasta." Right. So that was where the conceptual thing with me. So I think building projects is incredibly important, and try to do projects that don't go too much in depth too soon, but rather just get your momentum going, because that's like one of the other challenges. So the common mistakes, like technically the common mistakes are not using spacing properly, not defining functions properly, doing like too many loops in one, not remembering how you name variables, not remembering how you name functions. So a lot of those sorts of things were common for me, but I just kept Googling my errors, right? So that's another thing. Another common mistake is people don't ask for help in general. Like maybe you guys do because you're active on here on a live Q&A, but in general, a lot of people don't ask for help. They just kind of go on their way. There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm still learning things all the time about Django. Like the other day, Adam Johnson, I just mentioned him. He had a blog post about, this was a few months back now, actually, and I have a video on it so you can check it out. But he had a blog post about a single page Django application, similar to like Flask. And I was like, what? I didn't even think that would be possible or think to do it. I mean, clearly it's possible because you could put a bunch of things into one Python module for sure. But to do it in an efficient way and do it so cleanly, it was awesome. That was really cool to learn. I've been working with Django for 10 years. Never even crossed my mind to do something like that. So still learning. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is going a little bit longer than I anticipated. I was meaning for about 30 minutes or so, and it ended up being 45. This happens too much. I really need to put a timer on these things because they end up always going too long because I talk way too much. Do I remember everything that you've learned? That is a silly question. No, nobody remembers everything that they've learned. Like, tell me what you learned in second grade, or what is that? 7 years old? Tell me that. You know, you're not going to remember everything. What you need to get in the habit of doing is searching for things, Googling it, and also writing blog posts about really aha moments, even if it's just for yourself. If you write an aha moment blog post as in a guide to solving a problem that you had, that guide will become useful for yourself in the future. I've definitely used some of my old blog posts because I forgot how to do specifically that thing. Is it possible to create a video streaming website using Django? Technically, yes, it is possible, but I would not recommend it. I would recommend using something more like Nginx. It's built for that. Do I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast? Yes, I do. Do you listen to it, B2? Time flies when you're having fun. This is true. This is true, Script Kitty. Looks like some of you are having a conversation with each other. You've learned Python. How do you master it? Did you just ask me this about Django? Build more projects. That's it. That's the thing. Like, what's something that's interesting that needs to be solved, and do it. Do it. Thank you. Appreciate it, Alexandre. Can I build a website like Zoom? Well, Zoom is an app, and it has all sorts of cool stuff. It's not just a website. Man, that'd be a tricky thing to do on your own. A schema editor in Django. What kind of schema? Is this? This is probably like just another term that I should know, because there's all kinds of schemas that you can be using. Schema editor Django. Ooh. So for your database, yes, that is. I've never had to use this tool. So schema editor in Django, never had to use that tool. So it's literally editing the schema of the database. That's what it says. So the schema of the database being like how it's structured, right? That is what the schema editor is. Whenever I've actually needed to change something, I go into the SQL itself and change it that way if it's something that I can't change with migrations. Yeah, so this is telling me that the data abstraction layer that turns things into create a model or delete a field into SQL, that's the job of the schema editor. So this is mostly an automated process, which means that I've actually used it a lot. I just wasn't aware of the term of schema editor in Django. See, you learn stuff all the time. This is probably the most ridiculous comment I've ever seen on here, but also like definitely something worth thinking about. Like you're connected to all of these people. That's hilarious. I don't even want to get any further than just showing it on the screen. Hey, thanks for watching 30 Days of Python. Appreciate it. Projects, man. Always creating projects. Just more and more projects. Find someone who has a problem that they need solved and automated and help them solve it. Right? So one of the things that I would absolutely love to have is one button to say record and all of this turns on. I probably could figure out to do it on my own, but I've got so much other stuff to do. But not just record, right? I also mean getting the camera ready, making the lighting with this background, because this is just dark, right? And that's because of the lighting. That's it. I want all of that stuff taken care of, basically like Tony Stark's Jarvis in Iron Man 1. He just like Jarvis does everything. I want that. So please figure that out for me. That's going to be a really, really hard thing to do, but I would love it. But really, even just something that literally controls my camera and my lighting to match like what's going on here, or another picture that I really like. So it literally moves the lights around and adjusts the camera settings to fit any given picture that you may have seen. And I also have these like colored lights that you can change the colors of. You could always do stuff like that in the background as well. That would be amazing. So there's a project for you. Somebody do it, please. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it. Answered a lot of questions today, almost a little over 2 hours of questions. After a little bit of a hiatus from actually doing these things. I don't think I'm going to be doing these all the time, right? I think I'll do them from time to time because these live Q&A things get pretty redundant, especially if you've been on some of these a lot. Like I get asked, maybe I need to make more videos about these. Maybe this is just grounds for a bunch of videos I should make. But like the Django versus Node.js, like literally the last question. This comparison is not great. I probably need to make a video of it and just be like, hey, go watch that video. But also like the video streaming with Django and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about over and over again in these Q&As, and that comes up a lot. So that's why I don't actually do it nearly as much as I used to, because you just got kind of burnt out on answering the exact same question over and over again. And I wasn't able to be like, hey, go to this timestamp on this video and go watch it. So if some of you want to turn these live Q&As into smaller clips, I'd be very interested in talking to you about doing that. And I'm definitely interested in that. So shoot me a direct message on Twitter, and maybe we can see about getting something going there. My Django Bootcamp or Try Django series. I think the Try Django series because it's polished. The Django Bootcamp was live, so there were some things about live and teaching live that just aren't great. So the Try Django series is polished. Things that maybe I messed up in the recording or something, I re-record those things or fix them, and so usually my non-live series are better at this point than the live Q. Like this is a live Q&A, so there's that too. Look at you guys. You keep on getting me more questions answered, huh? Here's another one. I already have a class for this. So meaning, how do you track the stock market? I'm assuming maybe stock market portfolio. You track certain stocks in the stock market so you can monitor them. I made an entire course on this called Time and Tasks 2. It's on my website. All the code is on GitHub. So if you just want to look at the code, you can always go there on my website, cfe.sh, check it out. It's definitely worth learning from. Oh yeah. So like a Reddit or Quora type thing. This would probably be a good thing, and perhaps would be even better than this. The tricky part is YouTube has figured out the spam part in a big way, right? So some people spam things and just like it just fills up with spam, and then it's really not great for everybody else. How do you actually avoid that in a way that allows for Q&A type thing that I can answer those in video format? Or I should just take a bunch of questions that I know that need to be answered and make videos out of them. What do you think? Hey, you're new here. What are you expecting? I don't know. What are you expecting? Welcome. Nice. E-commerce website. Do it. That's great. Okay. Well, that's it, everyone. Thanks for checking us out. And I will do live stuff from time to time, but of course I have plenty of tutorials that are coming out. And this Friday, I'm going to be talking to the founder or one of the co-founders of the Turing Pi really excited to see what's coming out with the Turing Pi. Let me just give you a glimpse of what one of those are. If you've never seen a Turing Pi, I gotta pull mine up. It's a little dusty, but this is a Turing Pi. So what those things are on there are Raspberry Pis. They're Raspberry Pi compute modules. Each one of these is a Raspberry Pi basically without all of the I/O on there, right? So like the pins and the USB and all that stuff. So one of the co-founders of that, they're working on a second version of this for the newer version of the Raspberry Pi. He and I are going to be talking on Friday in a live chat. So if you have questions, bring them then. Anyways, thanks again, guys. I will talk to you soon, and shoot me a tweet so we can have some more conversations there too. Take care, guys.